Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive what-if, a thought experiment that honestly sounds like a Hollywood disaster movie, right? But it's actually going to reveal a whole lot about the hidden physical foundation of our modern world. We're talking about the invisible infrastructure that literally keeps our entire civilization running.
So, what if the internet just disappeared tomorrow? Picture this. You wake up, it's 9 a.m., and you do what pretty much all of us do every single morning. You reach right for your phone to check in on the world, but you swipe your screen, and nothing. Absolutely nothing is loading. You restart your router, you toggle your cellular data on and off, you reboot the phone. It doesn't matter. The screen is just stubbornly blank.
First thing you notice, your messages just won't send. WhatsApp says disconnected. So you look over at your friends or your family in the room, and you see they're staring at their own phones with the exact same confused look. Okay, so it's not just your device acting up.
Then it hits you. All your streaming and social media apps are completely frozen. YouTube, offline. Instagram won't refresh. You try to search what's going on, and you just get error messages. Any online games you had running, instantly disconnected.
But then, the real panic sets in. You open your digital wallet, maybe check your bank app, and bam, error screen. Your digital money is entirely inaccessible. We're talking trillions of dollars that normally zip through these digital banking systems every single day, just frozen in place. There's no way to get to it.
Now, most people kind of assume the internet is this magical, invisible cloud floating around in the air, right? But looking at the actual data, the reality is wild. Over 95% of international internet traffic actually travels via pulses of light through physical, undersea fiber optic cables. These cables stretch across entire oceans and continents. Satellites and other methods, they make up just a tiny 5% sliver. So the internet isn't really up in the sky at all. It's buried in the dirt, and it's literally resting on the bottom of the ocean.
So instead of a magical cloud, think of it more like a massive, physical, global highway. Combined with data centers, internet service providers, and routers, this network is moving critical data every single second of the day. Every major industry relies on it. Honestly, it's essentially the nervous system of modern civilization. Just like your body completely depends on your brain sending signals to function, our modern world absolutely depends on this physical network to move information.
Okay, so let's start the clock. Part 1, the first 5 minutes, and a global realization.
Within literal seconds of the network dropping, all those conveniences we don't even think twice about, they just vanish. Offices get totally locked out of their cloud files, which brings remote work to a dead stop. Online classes freeze right mid-sentence. You're at the coffee shop or the grocery store, and suddenly the digital payment systems are just throwing error messages. Ride-sharing apps crash, so they can't match drivers to passengers, leaving people totally stranded. Even stock market traders suddenly lose all access to real-time data. And within just 5 minutes, you start seeing this massive wave of confusion spreading rapidly across traditional TV and radio because even the major news organizations are scrambling to figure out what's going on without their usual digital feeds.
Let's jump forward a bit. Part 2, 24 hours later, and the infrastructure really starts to crack.
So, looking across every major sector here, this sudden lack of connectivity forces society to instantly fall back on whatever offline backup plans they have. In the banking sector, you've got people waiting in these massive, winding lines at ATMs, desperately trying to get physical cash. In healthcare, it's a mixed bag. Hospitals can still treat patients using their local, on-site backup systems and emergency procedures, but sharing any vital medical records between different facilities, that completely halts. For logistics, we're talking severe airline and shipping delays cascading across the globe purely because schedules and cargo tracking heavily rely on the internet. And of course, in communication, all video calls are dead. Families and even governments are forced to rely entirely on traditional phone networks, radio, and TV.
And right at this 24-hour mark, the public reaction really intensifies. Supermarkets get incredibly crowded as people scramble to buy essential supplies because, well, nobody knows when supply chains will actually recover. Plus, think about it. Without being able to just quickly check a trusted news site, you can't verify facts. So rumors start spreading like wildfire, purely through word of mouth. To try and maintain order, governments are forced to hold emergency, old-school press conferences, broadcasting them over traditional airwaves just to keep everyone informed.
Fast forward a bit more. Part 3, 1 week in the dark and a world rewritten. 7 days in, and the global consequences are honestly staggering. The global economy is just reeling from severe financial market disruptions, and international trade is slowed to an absolute crawl. You have to remember, our modern supply chains are incredibly interconnected. Warehouses, shippers, retailers, they're constantly exchanging data just to keep store shelves stocked.
Without those internet connections, coordinating deliveries becomes a logistical nightmare, making a ton of everyday products virtually impossible to find. Meanwhile, you've got engineers and tech experts all over the world working around the clock, frantically assembling these temporary localized network setups, just cobbling things together to keep essential government and emergency services communicating.
Now, this comparison brings up a really fascinating duality. Before the outage, our lives were completely intertwined with things like cloud services, global supply chains, endless streaming, and social media. But after 7 days without it, humanity remarkably adapts. Companies literally dust off old filing cabinets and go right back to using paper records. People who can't scroll on their phones or stream movies go back to actually reading physical books. And, surprisingly, neighbors actually start talking to each other more. It leads to this much deeper, face-to-face community support. We find a way to survive and adapt exactly like we always have through natural disasters and huge historical challenges.
Which brings us to part 4, the reality check. Could this actually happen? Okay, we've just walked through this pretty terrifying timeline of an offline world, right? We went from 5 minutes of pure confusion to a 24-hour crisis, and then a full week of drastic adaptation. But let's take a collective breath and break down the reality of this situation, because I want to explain exactly why this specific, cascading global nightmare is actually highly unlikely to happen.
The most crucial reality to remember here is that there is absolutely no single button that can turn the entire internet off. The internet just isn't a giant machine sitting in a warehouse somewhere. Because of how this physical infrastructure was designed right from the start, there's no master switch anyone can just flip.
The whole system is fundamentally built for resilience. This network is incredibly decentralized. It's made up of millions of independent servers, routers, massive data centers, and of course those physical undersea cables we talked about earlier. Now yes, individual websites crash all the time. Certain countries might suffer regional outages. Those undersea cables can even be physically cut, or we might see massive cyber attacks. But the network itself, it's designed to survive all of that. If something breaks, the system just automatically reroutes traffic through multiple backup routes, steering right around the localized damage. On top of that, tech companies and governments are constantly duplicating data across different locations and monitoring these networks 24/7 to make sure a localized failure doesn't accidentally trigger a global collapse. So even though a total, permanent global shutdown is virtually impossible, going through this explainer really proves just how deeply we depend on this invisible digital highway. It is quite literally the backbone of our commerce, our healthcare, our communication, and honestly, just our daily lives. And as AI and smart devices continue to grow, our reliance on this infrastructure is only going to get deeper. It leaves us with a pretty powerful thought to ponder. We so often take this incredible, decentralized marvel totally for granted. How long could you and your community truly survive if we ever lost it? It's worth thinking about your own backup plan. Because while the internet isn't going to disappear tomorrow, well, it never hurts to be prepared for the unexpected, right?